and welcome to PM Branding Thursdays. I've been taught to brand everything, so now I'm branding Thursdays. As you can see, we theme up every Thursday. Last month we were talking about women empowerment, and this month we're talking about the need and importance of branding. My name is Nana Nsakro. Now, last week, Thursday, we looked at brand. We thought that you and I don't buy from our pockets, we buy from our emotions. So therefore, if I walked into a shop and there's a whole roll of chocolates and chocolate drinks, I will buy with the one that connects with my spirit. Therefore, you making the product should make sure that your product is communicating to the spirit. That's branding. I'm sat in the foyer of Alisa Hotel. Why did I choose Alisa? Because it connected to me. That's why I'm here other than anywhere else. It is important, and therefore anything and everything can be branded. Today we are looking at brand identity, and I am talking to Sylvester Fish, who is a marine engineer and also a brand expert, to educate us on the need to have a brand identity. Your brand should have an identity. I don't quite get it yet, so we all want to go to school. Sylvester, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Nana. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too for giving us your time. And today we are looking. Last week, thank you very much. Very insightful. How it's amazing that everybody thinks, oh, if I have money, I'll buy it. But no, it's if you connect with it, you buy it, because you have money. You have there's a choice for you, but you need to connect to the product before you buy it. So it's a very good education. But today we're talking about brand identity.
Yeah.
And take me to school on it. Define brand identity.
Yeah, brand identity is what normally most folks will call the corporate name or the corporate logo or the different varieties of colors that can easily cause your market segment to identify you. You understand? So right from the initial commencement stage of a business, you must first and foremost have an identity. Mm-hmm. An identity is a name. It could be a symbol. It could be anything that actually ascribes a certain level of uniqueness that people will get to know from the initial onset. But brand identity is not the brand, as we talked about the other time. The brand is just the emotional experience that you actually have with the consumer, or what the consumer actually have about the product. Defining your brand identity is very, very important, because that is a stage where you have to be very clear about your sense of vision and what you actually want the brand to be known by as far as your market segment is concerned. Why? Because you have a lot of oversaturated market. You have a lot of overcrowded market players within the industry. It could be banking, it could be telecom, it could be insurance, it could be telecom, it could be real estate, it could be clothing line, it could be shoes, aviation, hospitality, many varied forms of industry. So there are very competitive players in the system, and they are all vying for one thing: to own a territory within the mind of the consumer. So you have to ask yourself that, what can I bring differently as far as identity is concerned? It is not very, very advisable to just copy a company's identity or a company's logo and then make it yours, because that will be plagiarism. And of course, certain symbols have been trademarked and registered, so you'll be flouting certain corporate law or corporate registration laws. It's important to be very unique and authentic. If you take an identity like that check sign that swoops like a check sign, which we all call Nike, you understand? Immediately you see it, only one thing comes to your mind: just do it. Why? Because the just do it is the philosophy, or is the value behind the identity. And the reason why people can just see the identity and connect with the brand, which is the emotion behind that identity, is because the management of Nike has been able to position that value on an emotional level over time within the mind of the consumers. So immediately they see the symbol, they can ascribe an emotion to it. Have you ever wondered, sometimes you can drive in town, you see so many symbols, you see so many posters, so many billboards, so many taglines, but you don't connect to them. You don't even know the philosophy behind them. It means that they only stop at just the brand identity, and that has been the conventional wisdom. Most business owners think mounting a billboard, the number of billboards you mount, or the number of commercials you run, or the number of flyers you post around, or the number of call cards you give, or the number of how interactive your internet website is, would generally mean that you can be identified. What actually gives momentum and gravity to the identity is the value, the experiential value that you have been able to communicate to me. For instance, I mean, of course, as a chief as well, you can have an identity, and the identity could actually be the name, Nana Kwao Answer, or, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Okay. All right. Okay. And then you could have a certain symbol. Maybe you can choose a certain symbol that means something to you. Okay. Now that symbol is your identity.
Probably a microphone in a palanquin.
Exactly. That can become a corporate identity or an identity exclusively to you. But then, how will people connect with the value? Immediately they see the identity is when you have been able to communicate your values to them on an emotion, societal issues that you are actually addressing on a consistent basis. People are listening to the issues and their problems are being solved in one way or the other. They are gaining much more insight about your programs. That is the value you are communicating. You're communicating that value of insightful societal programs. So immediately I see that microphone in that palanquin, I can immediately relate with you. Why? Because you have positioned that value of insightful societal issues within me. I have connected with it. You are speaking to me. It's real. It's a daily thing that you're talking about. That is it. People rush into coming out with identities, and then they expect the consumers or the market segment to immediately know it. I once met one actor, and then he said, I've done 35 movies, Fish, but in the time I come out, I expect people to at least wave at me and say, hello, hi, I saw you in this movie. And then when he started talking, I knew where the problem was. I said, look, you assumed right from the onset that your market segment should know your brand value or your brand promise or your tagline. Mm-hmm. They don't. Right after you finish the movies, you need to be able to communicate the brand promise or the tagline to them, and then emotionally engage them, be relevant in your value. Mm-hmm. Let them experience the value in real time, in reality. Mm-hmm. Once they do that, when you go out there, they can associate whatever you are outside with whatever you are on the inside. Have you ever wondered why some people actually spend big budget on a lot of advertising, and at the end of the day, they don't see it on their sales return? Because one way you can measure whether consumers have been able to relate with the identity of the brand is you can see it in your sales. It will skyrocket. When you start, for instance, maybe you launch your product. Launching the product is different from launching the brand anyway. When you launch the product brand, if I should use that word, it means that you have actually introduced the product on the market scene. It is new, okay, because the product is different from the brand. Yeah. The brand is the value behind the product, that is experience. Mm-hmm. Now, once you are able to launch it, and then in June, let's say in June 1st, you saw that sales skyrocketed. Mm-hmm. And because sales skyrocketed, now you begin to feel a little complacent, and then you stop executing and stop value that was actually causing the sales to increase. What you begin to experience is that there's going to be a nosedive of your sales. It means that you have stopped focusing on the most critical thing, what we call the tipping point. You've stopped focusing on the critical thing that is causing the consumers to make the purchases. They are only making the purchases because you are communicating your value in real time to them. You understand? And that is why they are making the sales.
You keep saying real time, real time. And elaborate on that for me a bit.
I keep saying real time because I'm using the word real time means reality. Meaning that you are not communicating just a very nice phrase that sounds nice. We are the best in banking services, or we are the best in telecom, or you put up a very sensational 45-second commercial that looks so empathetic, and people start crying and they start feeling pleasurable. You're not just putting up jargons and cliches in commercials or putting up images that will strike some emotional adrenaline on a banner. I'm using the word real time because people are experiencing it in reality. That is the word, that is what I mean by real time. It means that when you come to me, you should be able to experience me on an emotional level. When you walk into Stanbic, or you permit me to use them, maybe you save with any of the banks, you need to be able to experience whatever value they have fronted as their tagline in real time, meaning in reality. You can walk out of that bank and you know that this is my bank. You feel a little sense of pride talking about it and recommending it even to someone. You understand? So another thing we need to understand is that brand identity is very critical, because when you are having something we call brand transfers is the stage or the phase where you get to, where you make a decision after an acquisition or a merger as to whether to change anything about the brand identity. I'll give you a real example. A recent acquisition has been made by one major bank in Ghana, which is Fidelity Bank. They acquired ProCredit. Now, after a merger or an acquisition, it is left for the management to decide whether they will change something about their brand identity. Are we changing the color? Are we changing the font size? Are we changing anything about our tagline, our brand promise, our brand image? It is important to distinguish between what is variable from what is non-negotiable after brand transfer. Because if you are not able to distinguish between what is variable and what is non-negotiable, what is going to happen is that you end up confusing the consumers. They don't really know what is happening to you. Musicians at a point change their name, right? At a point, you see one musician, Puff, exactly, Daddy Luma and Puff Daddy changing their name to PDD, and you have different people. Someone like Bandana changing the name to Shetawale and all that. But we need to be very careful, because once you are changing a brand identity, you need to understand that you don't have to compromise the personality, the aura, the charisma, the values, the energy that the previous brand identity had. Because once you change the personality and you change the value and what you stand for, now the consumers don't really know what to choose anymore. They begin to see you as you don't really have a line of sight. You're not focused. Today you're this, tomorrow you are that, next year you are that. So I can't trust your brand anymore because you are confusing me. I need to stick with one brand identity, or I need to stick with the emotion that I have always known. It is left with you to convince me that in as much as you have changed that brand identity, if the need be, that I will not experience a different emotion
stay there for me, fish, because then that's just throwing the whole spanner in the works. Now, it's good to change or good to rebrand and change the name. However, it's not good to leave the spirit behind it. So therefore, why do you want to change? Stay tuned. We are coming back. Well, hello and welcome back to this exciting conversation on Branding Thursdays. Before we went on a break, Sylvester was just telling us about times people change their brand. You acquire a bank and maybe you want to change something. That's one. And then two, musicians will change their name. However, they're not supposed to lose the spirit behind changing it. So then we want to find out. I thought it was the whole idea of changing it, from old to the new. So why do you want to keep anything in there? And we want to find out about, sometimes you pay goodwill because somebody's built a brand. But if you want to change it, why do you want to pay the goodwill? But let's start with, changing your name but not losing the spirit behind it. I thought that was the whole idea. You just wanted a fresh spirit to get rid of the old.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, I understand exactly what you mean, but one thing we need to understand is that once you have been able to establish an emotional connection with your market segment over time, let's say 5 years or 10 years down the line, you feel that you want to have a new change, then you need to understand that if you're changing the brand identity, it could actually be very catastrophic because you may shift away from what the consumers actually know to a new brand identity. And then also there is an element of something we call rejuvenation. Brand rejuvenation, meaning that you are actually rejuvenating the brand. And that one has to do with innovation. The identity stays the same, but you are actually changing the models. You're bringing out new ideas, but the same. A clear example. Why is it that cars design new models every year? Why is it that certain original equipment manufacturers like smartphones will come out with new ideas? Recently, there has been a new watch that will check your blood pressure. It will check your cardio, your fat burns, your calories. It's the same brand identity we know as Apple, but they are actually adding newer versions of what? Their functional benefit, and that is rejuvenating their brand every now. Anytime you hear this new product, you feel something new has come on the scene.
But would that come under product change or would that come under brand change? I would think brand change would be Apple saying that, look, okay, now we call pineapples.
Exactly. I'm trying to explain that aspect has to do with what we call the brand life cycle. They are actually innovating along the brand life cycle, but the identity, Apple, is the same. You understand what I'm saying? And that is what I'm trying to explain. They have been able to innovate with new technologies, but they still maintain the name Apple. And the same logo with the apple being cut off there is still there.
Let's go with Bandana to Shatawale. Let's go from Daddy Lumba to DL. The product is right the same, but the name changed.
Excellent. And if you would really, really be very discerning, you'll realize that when you even look at these two names, Bandana and Shatawale, you realize the word Shatawale itself strikes some form of vibrancy and energy. You understand what I'm saying? And the word bandana, even though it is its own brand identity, in terms of tenacity and energy, Shatawale strikes a certain, that is why it's able to connect with the youth a lot, because the youth is much more vibrant, you understand? So you see that every personality I presumed about bandana, I have totally left it. You understand what I'm saying? And then I see this new brand identity, Shatawale, to be much more vibrant. That is what I'm trying to say. Because if the old personality was infused in the new brand identity, trust me, it will be difficult to really make your sales. You understand what I'm saying? To even further break it down, if you're totally changing a brand identity, you need to consider the experiences that you have actually created with your consumers over time. Because if you are changing the brand identity, you may end up, they may ask you, what is this new brand identity? What is the brand promise? Are we going to still experience the same old feeling like the previous brand identity, or is something new coming on the scene? That cannot be left to chance. You have to let them know that even though we are actually changing a slight color within our brand identity, like ADB did, they changed something about the identity. Exactly. And you see that instantly, it started communicating subliminally to their market segment, their consumers. It was looking more youthful, very dynamic, very refreshing, and people started communicating with it.
I think Goyle did a fantastic job.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
And I
brilliant.
personally started buying from
Brilliant.
Goyle. You know, I'd drive to the next Goyle to buy, because that definitely connected with me.
Goodness.
Goyle definitely connected
Exactly,
with me.
and that is what we call brand identity. They changed something about their brand identity, and immediately it came out. You see that the old Goyle you knew, now when you're driving there, you feel, no, you're driving, even in as much as a Goyle, but you think you're driving into a different.
There was something
That is what I am saying. They managed to change that brand identity in terms of their design, style, packaging, but then the same name is there. That is why I said that you need to know what is variable, meaning what is changeable and what is non-negotiable within that brand identity phase. You have to understand what you can change and what you cannot change. If Goyle said, okay, let's just add one more E to the word Goyle, totally it throws me off balance. Then it means this is something else. But they maintained the name, the corporate name Goyle, but they changed their style, their uniqueness, their approach, their design, their packaging. And instantly, you begin to feel the personality of the new packaging. They are trying to connect with you that the old personality of the Goyle you know is not the same one we are giving to you now. And you could see that even now, myself, I even do buy from them, because I'm connecting with the youthfulness and the whole dynamic and the colorfulness, and you know, it's so bright, and the design of the shapes of the shell pumps and all that. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And that is exactly my point. This is very important, because once the management, the board, whichever department is in charge of actually managing the brand, understand what is variable, what is not negotiable, you will confuse your consumers, and the expectation and the objective that you are actually looking for will be jeopardized.
But why are we like that? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to be petrol in my car. Meanwhile, I will drive past 3, 4 petrol stations, and I know, well, there's a girl up the road, so when I get there, I'll buy my petrol. I hardly ever use the shop. Yeah. I just, you know, buy petrol and drive off. Yeah. So, I mean, why are human beings like that? Why go? I mean, it's just petrol. It's the same gallon or 2 gallons that I would have bought. It's probably the same price.
Yes.
You know, so why do we behave like that?
You have asked a very powerful question in the arena of brands. It boils down to what I call the fundamental human condition. The fundamental human condition, that human beings are actually beings that have needs on different levels of layers. The first layer is food. No one would think of buying petrol if he or she is hungry. But when you are actually well satisfied, you move on to another higher form of need. A sense of what? Safety. You need to be secure. Your house has to be well secure. Your business has to be well secure. Then you move to a sense of belonging. You need to feel love. You want to marry. You want to raise children. Then you move on to other self-esteem. These things are very fundamental, because they apply to all human beings, irregardless of race, culture, religion, creed, whatever. we buy based on our immaterial psychological satisfaction. And that is the apex of branding. Branding experts understand that we are dealing with human beings that have immaterial and psychological needs. If you walk into a, let's say, any of the 4- or 5-star hotels in Ghana, and then someone approaches you, hello, how may I help you? And then, please, can you sit down here? And then by the time you realize someone is polishing your shoe, how would you feel? Being honest with yourself. Immediately, it's a fundamental human condition. Once you are in this body, you will feel it. And that is where the brand is. What was the main objective of going to the hotel? It's to just book a room and sleep. But they are meeting other immaterial and intangible needs that are within the human being. And this is where the money is. This is where I tell people that money is not in the people's pocket. It is in their minds, in their subconscious. And once you are able to meet their psychological needs, you will forever be in business. So you just go beyond the functional benefit of your business, of your industry. If it's hospitality, do something and breakfast. You understand? If you're a lawyer, do something more than just litigation. If you're a doctor and you want to establish your own hospital, of course, we know that sick people come over there, but provide something extra. You can provide a little garden where people can just sit down and hang out, a little, seesaw for the children to play. That is something extra. You understand what I'm saying? Now look, have you been to this hospital? They have a playground for kids. So if even the father or the mother is going for a normal checkup and is delaying, the kids can go and play. It's an extra something you are providing as far as the health industry is concerned. And that gives you that differentiating factor. Where there is lack of differentiation or poverty of differentiation in whichever industry you are in, it's only a matter of time.
Does it mean that you brand to target certain stages of society? So maybe I am so full up at home, I have my own house, and I decide that, well, I'm not going to put any petrol in my car until I get to go. And then there may be somebody who says, look, I'm so hungry, I don't even care, just give me any kerosene, let me go. So when you are branding, you say, look, let me target an answer. He is pompous and he was not going to buy anywhere, but you come to go. Let me target that person because he even wants more than an answer. He wants the petrol to come to his house. Do you brand accordingly so you target people?
Precisely, precisely. In as much as we know that the basic use of a car is to just move you from point A to point B. You reduce time, you become more effective and more productive, right? It's better than walking if you know you're going for. But do you think anyone can buy a Bentley?
No.
How many people can buy a Rolls-Royce Phantom or a Bugatti or a Lamborghini? They are all cars, they're all machines. The carburetors are the same, the exhausts are the same. Why? Because the value that the brands department of Bentley or Lexus or Lamborghini or Mercedes have been able to position to your mind is worthwhile. They've done that so scientifically and so well. Once you hear the name Bentley, the first thing that comes is an expensive car. Why? Because they've been able to associate that extremist quality in your subconscious mind that in as much as it is a car, the value we are giving you is an exceptional. It's exceptional. It's top of the range of all cars. You follow what I'm saying? They've been able to do that professionally. They've been able to do that psychologically and very scientifically. You understand? So, yes, to answer your question, it is important to know the market segment. If you are actually into vest or a three-piece suit, I like my three-piece suit. Therefore, if you want to say, okay, look, I'm going to design something for Sylvester Fish, then you target people like that. You understand what I'm saying? If you are into ties and you are selling ties and you know that this tie is not just any tie, this is Donald Trump. It's trumped. You know what I'm saying? This is Trump. You understand? Oh, you made me laugh, man. You know, this is not just any tie. This is Trump.
It's a tie from a mess called the coronation of the French drums. So then you know it's a different league altogether. I'm going to take a break, and then when I come back, I want to find out, after you have created a good brand identity, how does it help with goodwill when you're selling it? And how does it help with people then wanting to franchise because you have done the hard work? How does it work? Stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back to Branding Thursdays, and guess what? We are talking about branding this month, and I'm with Sylvester Fish, a marine engineer and also a brand expert. I just want to find out how much your brand identity affects the value when you are selling it off, and also how much does it influence in people coming to say, you know what, I want a bit of your franchise to go and do something elsewhere. Does it come from you creating your brand identity, or that's a whole different segment altogether? Sylvester.
Okay, it is very important that once you've been able to establish the brand over time and consumers have come to trust the brand, they know that you can deliver anytime, any day when they close their eyes. What you need to understand is that your market value, in terms of your yearly sales or quarterly sales, is actually telling you something about the value of your brand. You understand? Maybe you're making $1 billion USD in beverage, or you're making $1 billion USD in selling real estate because you're selling top of the notch upper class real estate or lower class, whichever. It is important to find out whether you would sell off in terms of the franchising you're talking of, right? That has to do with your own vision of the corporate firm, whether they would want to be extending their brand identity to different cultures or different countries or different cities, to different companies who like to buy their franchise. But it is important that you are careful, because if someone comes to you and says that I want to buy or have a franchise, the name you have, I want to franchise it and use it, you need to understand ethical branding. You need to understand the nature, because if you are using a certain recipe, like KFC uses a certain best secret recipe, and someone else has come and says that, look, I want to buy your franchise name KFC in Ghana or maybe in Brazil, and you're not careful because you're so much focused on the money, so you just sell it off. And things does not really go very well, and someone actually begins to buy the food and then bad taste. What happens is that people begin to tarnish the image of the franchise. So a lot of surveillance, a lot of reconnaissance, a lot of research has to go into who you are actually selling the franchise for. You need to understand what kind of recipe he or she is using, because if you go and use a different recipe, the same, if it's not the same or almost similar, but you use a different recipe, eventually you, the one selling of the franchise, you'll be skewing towards closure in the long term, because consumers will start to know that, why is it that there is a different taste here?
Because they're still associated to the mother.
Exactly, exactly. That is the thing. So even on a personal level, that is why you need to be careful who you partner with in business. Because if you, as a person, you've been able to manage your personal brand over a long time, and you've created that commitment to excellence, you need to be very careful who comes to you and say that, hey, I would like to do business with you, or hey, come on my program. You need to be very selective, because if the person does not meet your standard, personally, I would not recommend, because then they will be compromising on a very gradual process on something you've built for 20 years. So you need to grill the person and know whether the person or her own estate meets your standard. And once the person meets your standard, you can do business with the person. Other than that, it does not really make a lot of business sense to actually front up or partner or join just anyone who says, I want to do business with you, because they will come.
So how do you, you've talked about building value, but how do you build value in any product? I mean, you've talked about, you know, the billboards there not being enough, the adverts not being enough. So we take multimedia, you know. So what would multimedia do to build value? Obviously, what we do is TV and radio, you know. So what do we do to build value to multimedia?
Thank you very much. Media is a very powerful instrument that a lot of people listen to, meaning that it is the mouthpiece that even bridges the people and government. So it is a two-double-edged sword that can create and actually destroy. But one key thing that media can do, either TV or radio, is to focus on issues that are real. When I talk about issues that are real, no, people are looking for employment, graduate job, unemployment. People are coming out of the universities and polytechnics looking for employment. You take a look at relationships. Marriages are being compromised. People are heading towards divorce. Domestic abuse. Should you be with a partner that is abusing you physically and still believe he or she loves you? You follow what I'm saying? This is happening in homes. So once the media, any media firm that begins to talk and give such attention to such topics, trust me, you begin to actually increase the mass consumers. Because someone will say, hey, have you tuned into Joy News TV? Or have you tuned on if you are married, is it necessary to showcase how much you earn, why not? How do you raise up the children? You know, these are your wife or not are happening to people. Immediately, premium begins to generate on your market segment. Premium begins to generate on your segment. People will like to listen to your specific program because they know that when they tune in to Nane's program, oh, they will have something at the end of the day, something that they will not even hear from anywhere. They will hear it on your segment. Why? Because you also make an effort to bring in resource persons that are talking about issues that matter. Then your program becomes indispensable.
You see, let me stay with the media, the difficulty in the media. You see, we have a society that loves to hate politics. So every single person says, oh, I'm fed up with politics on the radio. However, if you're running a show, you know, talking about the very important things that you're talking now, and another one is doing one on MPP this, NDC, that you realize that they have the more listenership than the value-added show. So how does it play? It's a delicate balance.
It's a delicate balance, meaning that politics is very important because without democracy, I don't think you and I will be here. I once paid a visit to Monrovia and I could still see the remnants of the war, you understand? Burnt houses still, right from the Kendaja, what do you call it? The international airport. It's just because I stayed at RJ Kendaja. But I could still see the remnants of the shocks of the Civil War. Why? Because politics is very important. But the way in which we approach, politics should be very, very defined. You understand? So it could be a 60-40 kind of a relationship or a 50 to 45% kind of segment. You can't totally rule out the element of that realm, that political realm. But apart from politics, we are first fathers and mothers and aunties and brothers and sisters, and we relate. And sometimes we Once we get family wrong, we get society wrong. You understand? So we just have to have a delicate balance between family or societal issues that matter on a personal level and then politics.
Let me, again, with identity, there are certain products that are pretty much the same. Take a tin of milk, you have so many brands doing the same evaporated milk. How do you make yours different? When you read the label, it's 10% protein, 20% carbohydrate, 1%. I mean, you could just cut this label and stick it on here and nothing changes. So how do you make yours more different than somebody else's?
Yeah, then again, it has to do with what you actually know on the market. We know we have Ideal milk, we have Peak milk, we have Carnation, we have all kinds of milks over there. Some are lactose intolerant, some are not, and blah, blah, blah. But what you need to understand, what every businessman and woman need to understand is that once you're dealing with human beings, you'll be dealing with psychology. Okay? I mean, time will not allow me to talk about the human development stages by Erik Erikson, in psychology, that human beings go through certain layers of psychological growth. From 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, 21 to 20, different stages of growth. Once you are entering into the realm of humanity, you'll be dealing with emotions. And not only emotions, you'll be dealing with sight. You're dealing with all the senses of the person. Sense of sight, sense of taste, everything. So if you want to actually come out with something that will stand out, meaning that something that will stand out in terms of visuals, in terms of taste, once you put it in there, it's not too thick, it's not too light. Once you make up your something different, it means that you are telling or you're communicating your level of understanding about humanity. Trust me, Nana, at the end of the day, people buy things based on their connection and first based on design and packaging. Have you ever wondered why our country is rich in all forms of understanding as far as natural resources are concerned, but why is it that an average student will get to a grocery store and buy Cadbury? Why?
Packaging?
Packaging. You see, because the West understands the principle of brand design and packaging. That's why software is money on design. Put less human intelligence, far activities to design, because you know that they see first before you hear together. You buy it, it's the packaging. For all you know, another existing Ideal milk company or another existing company that is into these milks has much more nutritional facts than the one you're buying. But you will buy the one that has a good design, a good packaging, more attractive, more vibrant. Why? Because you are attracted. Remember, it's about differentiation, uniqueness. What is unique, what is attractive, and what is different? What are you bringing differently to the already existing market players? The consumers already know the market players. They already buy from Peak milk. They already buy from Carnation. If you have a certain range of shoes you buy and you are coming out with, you're not coming onto the new market or into the new industry, you need to analyze what is there already.
Thank you very much, Sylvester. But hopefully I can get you next week so we can continue our topic on branding. Branding Thursdays, and the whole of these Thursdays we are looking at branding. I'm sure by now, if you're sat home in a business, put a couple of notes down, make sure you don't flop when you come on the market. Are you going to connect to your prospective customer's emotion? You should be thinking about that. Sylvester, thank you very much. And folks, until next Thursday that we come to you with a different branding topic, have a beautiful week. And until, I want to say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again.